Okay, it's preparing our stream. All right, everyone, I have the chat open. So if you do have any questions throughout this webinar, please let me know and I'd be happy to get to those for you. But for everybody out there, my name is Brett Kestenbaum. I am the COO of Covalent Careers and a physical therapist. I am here with Kang Seo. He is a good friend of mine, a physical therapist out of Long Island, New York. I believe he's worked in the city and on Long Island as well.
Yeah.
Kang has worked in outpatient. He's done outpatient home calls, and now he's starting to venture out into telehealth. He is part of Rob Vining, who is our other guest's Telehealth 10K program, where he is competing to win $10,000 while learning how to improve the way he delivers telehealth care to patients. And then, as I mentioned, our other guest today is Rob Vining. Rob is the leading expert, or one of the leading experts, I should say, in telehealth in the PT field. He's been a PT since 2004, and he's been doing telehealth since 2004. Yes, telehealth has been around for that long, surprisingly enough. And Rob is the admin of the Telehealth PT Providers Facebook group, and he's also leading up the Telehealth 10K competition right now. So it's great having both of you here. For everybody in the audience today, what this is going to be really is a Q&A with Kang and Rob. So Kang is, again, he's going to, or he is learning about telehealth, and he's really starting out. So I know a lot of you will have similar questions to Kang, and Rob's here to answer all those questions. So really to kick things off, Kang, let's start with you.
Yeah.
First, before we get into the questions, really, what got you interested in telehealth? You know, how did you get around to this point in your career?
Yes. So I've actually spoke to Rob about this before, about a year ago, I believe. And that was an amazing conversation. It was kind of mind blowing. Rob, I don't know if you remember, but
I do, man.
Yeah, I seriously couldn't believe some of the answers I was getting. Just number one, the fact that telehealth existed, that kind of blew my mind. So basically, yeah, quick background of how I got interested, and my story is, so I'm about 4 to 5 years out of school, got quickly into the typical outpatient, seeing 3 to 4 patients an hour. And basically it's really a recipe for burnout, really. I just don't see it being sustainable past 4, 5, 6 years. And people are leaving, continuously. I see it every year now. People are quitting. One guy that I worked with just became a cop. He went to PT school, became a cop. I was like, okay. And it's really kind of sad because I know these people love doing what they do. It's just not a sustainable model. And early on, so like I said, I'm only 4 to 5 years out of school, but what I've noticed about 1 or 2 years out, I just knew that it wasn't sustainable, to the point where I actually cut my outpatient hours and I did home health to kind of, yes, money had something to do with it, because it was, per diem rates are pretty good for home cares, but it really changed the pace of my week, where I was really hustling during my outpatient clinic hours. And it was so crazy seeing 20 plus patients, really typical story of somebody working in an outpatient clinic, that I needed the other day. So for example, Wednesday and Friday to do home care, to really just hit the brakes and, even take that time to think about patients that I saw in the clinic the day before, just to kind of process, what am I going to do with them when I see them the next day? Because we all know that we have a little extra time when we do a little home care. Geriatrics are a little bit slower, obviously, so we don't really have to go and see 3 or 4 an hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing, that juggling outpatient clinic and home care for the past, I would say, 2.5 years. I'm still in the clinic about 30 hours out of the week, doing about 10 to 15 visits of home care on the side. So it's and that's been my life. And basically I'm trying to venture out. I'm in the process of just cutting out some of my outpatient clinical hours to to make some time. You see, time is really, obviously the most limiting factor.
Right.
So to set up the website, going through Rob's telehealth PT, which I'm sure he'll tell us more about, and basically marketing yourself, and number one, learning about how to do those consults online, even simple things as using Zoom and the logistics of all that. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Exciting. Now, for all of you who are just joining us, and if you don't know Kang, Kang also has two beautiful baby boys. So, managing your time when it comes to family, having the job that's going to pay your bills, and then also starting a new venture, it's 100% possible. It just takes really the dedication, and it takes the motivation to want to do those things, both for yourself and for your family. So, Kang, I really commend you on that, because I know it's not easy, but awesome work, even just getting started, because I know that's really a big hurdle for a lot of people, is that getting started part. So
Definitely.
yeah, so Rob, playing off that, tell us a little bit about your background, and then tell us what you've seen when it comes to people getting started with telehealth, and what backgrounds you've seen people come from getting into the industry.
Yeah. So my background, just kind of everything was sort of lucky. Whenever I was in my clinical settings, I was in I think three. It's either two or three, and I'm pretty sure it was three. Of my clinical settings were with people that strictly use McKinsey only. And so with McKinsey, it's a lot of hands off, a lot of don't touch the patient until you absolutely have to. And by being able to see that over and over again, and coming from the background that I did, which was a lot of almost the tech and music side of things before I got into PT school. So I was really deep in the unsigned artist type of distribution of music in different ways that weren't just getting on the radio. So this is back in the days where unsigned musicians could actually distribute their music through downloadable systems. And I was coming from that world whenever I got into PT school. And then seeing this in my clinicals where people didn't even have to be touched and they were getting better, like drastically better, like chronic neck pain for 10 years. And then 3 visits later, the PT I was working with never touched them. Bam, they're all better. And they're like, I haven't felt this good in a decade and a half. And you're like, whoa, okay, what's happening here? So being able to kind of converge all of those things into just starting out, I was like, why shouldn't we be able to do online visits, provide the value, provide the care, and kind of get patients better that way? Because a lot of patients were driving in, extended period of time. I was in Austin at the time, which traffic is horrible. So of course it's the typical 1 hour drive to the clinic, stay there for an hour, and then you got an hour drive back. That's 3 hours times 3 times a week. It's 9, almost 10 hours. So it was just one of those things where I could see the writing on the wall, where the future was going to have some sort of digital component for most brick and mortar clinics, and even just solo practitioners wanting to do this type of stuff. Little did I know it'd be 15 years later before this started becoming more and more of a thing. But I'm glad it is at the point where it is now, because the technology is very cheap, it's very efficient, and it's getting cheaper and more efficient all the time. So it's not just one of those things where maybe back in the day, 15 years ago, it was hard to get a server. It cost a lot to maintain a server. It was completely different to set it up. It was a lot of manual things that you had to do, lots of hands-on things that you had to do with the computer side. Not even talking about the telehealth side, but the computer side, you had to literally be an expert to be able to do that. So getting to this point now, I would say that the number one thing, just like you were telling King, that it's just getting started. Like deciding, okay, now I'm going to start. This is going to be something that I do. And that's the whole reason that we set up this telehealth 10K challenge, because we know that all the pieces are there and it's completely scalable. It's just people deciding to step out of their comfort zone, or at least push themselves in a direction where they might have to spend 5 hours a week to get this started. But once they get it started, it just gets easier and easier, because there's only a handful of shortcuts and really knowledge about technology that you need to know before everything else is just simple. Like there's only so many things that you need to be able to help a patient with to get connected on Zoom. It's click this link. Okay, you didn't click it. I'm going to email it to you again now. Click that link. There's only so many barriers to entry. So once you can kind of solve those barriers to entry, and like I've recorded tons of videos to show people all the common
Oh
hurdles that you're
man.
going to
Yeah, we're
face,
gonna talk about
right?
those videos. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love those videos, man.
Once you see that, and once somebody can kind of guide you through that, then it's just kind of, okay, reps and sets on learning how to treat and how to actually see a patient and to communicate in a way where the patient might say, yeah, I'm feeling this, but I'm not sure. And maybe you have to dig in 2 more layers deep. Whereas if you're in front of somebody and you can put your hands on them, it's much easier to get right to that, A to B, and you're at that endpoint where you need to be. With telehealth, you need to kind of dig a couple layers deeper because you can't use your hands, but you can still get a good bit of that information that's going to allow you to treat the patient successfully. So that's kind of why we did the telehealth 10K to get people going. And that whole background of where I've had all that experience before, it makes it that much easier now, 15 years later, to be able to say, okay, don't do any of this crap that I did that was wrong. Don't do any of that. Here's the thing that I see as best practices. And then it's easy for everyone to contribute inside that little Facebook group that we have. It's like 3,500 PTs to where a lot of people are like, hey, here's this question. And then 5 or 6 people are like, ooh, I had that same question. Here's what I tried,
Yeah.
So it's almost crowdsourcing it.
That group is really amazing, man. It's just
great.
and in the short time that I've been part of it, it's got so many different responses and members, number one, but just really the sense of community.
Yeah.
And no one's got, what I've noticed about that group that you don't really find in too many other groups. No one really has that ego that and those like little snide ass little comments. Nobody does that, and I love that, man. Because
usually if anything comes in there with a little bit of ego, I usually throw in like a funny GIF file to kind of tell the people that are in that conversation, hey, I'm watching this.
Yeah. It's funny because the group that I was a part of that I used to pay attention to a lot or coming out of school was DPT students, doctor physical therapy students.
Yeah.
And man, that was for me personally, like asking a question there, you were just going to get shut down. It was just terrible, man. It was, so I'm like, what is this group for? Are we even helping each other at all? And people just seriously keep putting each other down. And basically, I think it's just really refreshing to get answers without having people, because we're all new to this, or most of us are new to this.
Yep.
So it's really, and those videos that you posted are super, super helpful. I was just telling Brett, all right, I'm definitely gonna get in trouble from my wife from this, but I've been watching, Rob, I've been watching your videos during between my home cares, and I'm not looking at the screen. I'm just trying to listen with my headphones.
Yeah.
But every now and then at a red light, I'm gonna look over and see what the treatments is actually entailing. But I'm listening to the whole thing. It's like a podcast to me, really.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of trippy right now that I'm talking to you because I've literally seen your face for the past like 9 days. It's in my car.
Disclaimer: do not watch Rob's videos while driving.
Do not watch any videos.
But you can listen.
You can listen. Yeah. Because no, like I said, it all comes back to time. For people who are working right now, it's just how do you carve out that time? Yeah. Even if it's 4 or 5 hours out of the week, that's so huge, especially if you have a family. If you have like a new family like myself, it's I'm struggling to find 3 to 4 hours out of the week. And I've like I said, I've even cut I took a little bit of a hit with the paycheck with this, but I've cut 6 hours out of my outpatient clinic per week. So that's a nice little chunk, but I'm basically using that time to invest in this, really.
Smart. Yeah, man.
Because that time's so scarce,
It is. And that's one reason why we basically made everything downloadable instead of streamable.
Right.
Because when it's downloadable, you can then have it. And you know how YouTube's great until you want to use it kind of like a podcast and hit the off button, or your butt is constantly, if you put it in your pocket, your butt hits the button and now it's like onto a different episode of something. And you're like, no. Yeah. So that's why we wanted to make all these videos downloadable to where you could actually play them and not have to worry about specifically like being online all the time or using your wireless data. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's easy to load that up and then kind of use that to learn, because there's so much info, man.
Yeah. I mean, and now just the volume and the number of videos is just expanding even more, because I think you're putting together a library, right? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
Dude, it reminds me of the Game of Thrones library, that he's just putting together this like giant, like massive database.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a behemoth. I love it, man.
It is. Yeah. And it's going to be free. Everybody who's listening to this, December 1st, that's the exciting part, is we're going to announce who won the $10,000. and we're going to open up that library of all the videos that everyone has performed with patients. And in order for them to count, we kind of did this as an end around to where patients had to sign an educational release form to where they know that these videos are going to be public and free for other PTs and other patients to view these visits, so that other PTs can see, oh, this is how I would see a back pain patient. And most of the patients are giving out their age. So it's a good way to kind of at least get familiar with, here's the age category, here's the patient with back pain, how would they be seen by PT for telehealth? Well, here's 5 different examples from 5 different therapists. So it's going to build up that way. It's going to be nice.
So Kang, where are you in your telehealth career?
Right now, I'm seriously, all I'm doing right now is just watching and learning these video consults and how to probe questions that honestly that I should be asking during my treatment sessions in the clinic itself, because a lot of this is the same. But the problem is, if you have 8 to 10 minutes, you just can't probe that, that deep really. And constantly asking, how does this rep feel? How does this set feel? And give me a base, taking the appropriate baselines back and forth, because look, as we all know, once you're in the clinic, you see this patient 10 minutes out, you have to move on, or else you are going to get backed up.
So now, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish?
So my goal right now is, number one, is to learn. Okay, to learn how to do these consults, ask the right questions. And it really, what I found really helpful, as a coincidence, extremely helpful, is that I'm actually going into the same certification that Rob is trained in, which is McKenzie MDT. And it was such a pleasant surprise when I found out that Rob was MDT, because it just makes sense the way you probe and ask questions. And first promoting independence and primarily a hands-off kind of method of treatment. And that's honestly every single thing about that method I agree with. It's just the simplicity is to me is beautiful. I mean, it's just, there is no, not that I really don't have anything against Maitland. I actually took a whole bunch of Maitland courses. I was interested in ART at one point. And so I'm not saying any of those don't work. It's just, to me, my bias aligned with the bias of McKenzie and the MDT, which was crazy. When he told me that, I was like, wow, I think I was in the middle of part B or A when I spoke to you last year, and I'm actually taking part C next week.
Nice.
Yeah. So I got to, number one, kind of complete my certification. But I don't think it's really all about the certification, because I'm sure, and this is one of my questions I was going to ask Rob, is I'm sure there's got to be therapists that are not MDT but still doing telehealth. Is that correct?
Yeah, right? 100%.
Yeah, that's actually interesting to see. When I do have the time to kind of explore how other PTs are doing it, that's definitely something I'd be interested in seeing what the approach is, because like I said, it's just it's got to be, it can't just be all MDT, right? It's
Nope. No. There's people like Tom DeLonzo Baker that does total motion release. That's another popular method. And he does that all the time. There's a guy, Dean Volk, that does and utilizes total motion release and sees sometimes groups of patients at the same time.
Wow.
I think he runs, if you Google sciatica relief now, I think he actually wrote a whole book to where he's seeing people via telehealth.
Right.
And like I said, Tom's doing that all the time with people as well. And
so
then
do you find that it kind of is similar in the approach? Like the questioning is similar? Do you find that there's similarities or stark differences? What do you find is similar and different about?
I would say a lot of times with those two specific instances, with those treatment techniques, it's a lot of before and then some sort of movement and then after. So it's like you're taking a baseline, you're doing something, you're checking the baseline again.
Right.
So it's really easy to look at it that way, because then you're also going to see those fast results from patients who basically are like, oh, I'm coming in with neck pain and they can barely move. And so you take some baselines, you do one movement, and then you check those baselines, and immediately they get the deer in the headlights look when, they could only move their neck this far, and you do one movement and then they're like, what? And that's like the buy-in moment via telehealth, where you're like, okay, great, we see this mechanical change, now let's go forward and see how we're going to make this stick. So it's fun when you can do that sort of technique to make somebody change quickly. But then again, it's also I mean, there's pediatrics, women's health, all kinds of different niche areas
Yeah.
that you can dig into that show it's really beneficial versus, having the person having to cancel and they can't bring their kid in because their other kids are sick and they don't want to bring them to the clinic.
Right.
It just establishes that continued connection and continued treatment with their plan of care.
Yeah.
Versus kind of backing off and having to miss visits because some people might not have this option.
Right.
But that's kind of the treatment summary there.
So that light bulb moment that some patients have that you're talking about, I just finished part B in February, and I was just using some retraction progressions with some of my neck patients, and I've definitely had, I would say so far, two or three home runs off the top of my head that I can just think of. Like, just I actually had to keep a straight face because I couldn't believe how much more they were moving. I was like, this is kind of crazy. I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I expected. They walked in here like this and they can't even turn, and all of a sudden, So, but here's my concern though, or one of my questions rather. It's I would say, and if I'm being completely honest with myself and anybody, I would say I've had equally the amount of home runs as I've had I wouldn't say failures. I would say slow progress. So equally as slow. And one of my questions is, when you're in telehealth, you have that buy-in moment, especially with those huge increases in range of motion.
Right.
But when you're seeing somebody, and I'm thinking of this lady right now that I'm seeing, who's just for 2 years, she just thought that turning like this was fine, And so somebody like that, I guess with experience, are you telling these types of people that hands-on might be more appropriate for you during your initial consult, or
it all depends. Like literally, it depends. Number one, I like to get a good idea. So let's just kind of backtracking and whenever I was seeing patients, because now I haven't seen anybody since October, man. I'm starting to Jones to get back into the treatment field. But basically, I've just been doing teaching and then seeing like PTs for examples. So when I would see patients, the number one thing that I would do with my intake form, so pretty much here's the setup of how it was set for my specific digital practice. I'd have people come to the website. They would see like a video that described what I would do. And then there would be like a link, simple little button they'd click and then pull up a calendar. They would pick a day and time that fit best for them. And then they would pay for that visit beforehand. And then they would see an intake form that basically I would see what information I could get, like small snippets of info, like have you had PT before? How long have you had this issue? Where are your symptoms, medication issues, any sort of things like that. And I would be able to take that intake and then with my experience, be able to at least see if they kind of fit into that typical patient model of, okay, I don't hear any red flags. I'm not reading anything that would make me say, oh, I've got to send this person away. And I would just, let them know, okay, hey, we're going to do an hour-long evaluation. If I don't think you're a fit, I'm going to be able to refer you somewhere else, but let's try telehealth first for at least one visit and see how it is. So that way it's at least setting the patient up to not be completely guarded. Like, I don't know if this is going to work,
Right.
And I would tell them, if you're not a fit, I'm going to give you your money back and I'm going to triage you to somewhere else. So it really makes the patient let their guard down first, to where then I can get to that next level of figuring out, okay, what do you want to get out of this? Like seriously, talking to me for an hour is going to be very in-depth, and I'm going to have to figure out what you will benefit from most. But number one thing is I need to know what you want to get out of this.
Right.
So if the patient's like, no, I'm totally fine, and it's their family member that sent them there, then I want that family member there with them. So the family member can be like the realist, and the patient might just be the person that, like the old mechanic that's like, I'm fine. I got a shoulder. It works this well. And that's it. And this one works fine, but they're both fine, So it's trying to figure out, and it's almost like solving a puzzle, because you got to figure out how to get this patient to buy in if they are a fit.
Right.
So kind of getting their guard down first with letting them know that you're going to find the best fit, or you're going to help them get better faster.
Yeah.
It just makes it very easy for you to not have all the pressure on you to solve their issue right now. Because the majority of the time, if they're coming from other PT treatments, they've probably seen a PT 15 to 20 times, right?
Right.
And they wouldn't be seeing you if they were better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've almost got like a free at bat with this patient.
Yeah.
to try and at least get them, let's say 15% better
Yeah.
and maybe a little educated, versus they never had the patient education where they could sit and really get into depth with what's going on with their neck with a PT, because they've always been through that run of the mill clinic of, I saw the PT a total of 12 minutes. I was shuffled between 4 other people. I did a lot of total gym and bike, even though it was a neck issue,
Right.
you know, and so it just makes it that much easier to get buy-in. But with those slow improvers, I would say the number one thing is to really dig and almost be super honest and have come to Jesus moments really early to say, what do you want out of this? Because that's going to probably be a big eye opener where they're like, this guy cares. This guy's going to spend time with me and actually wants to get down to the brass tacks of it.
Yeah.
Instead of, all right, you're going to take up an hour of my time and go. Let's figure out some things to keep you busy.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that kind of, it ties into a similar concern or question other therapists such as myself to have is, how much improvement, well, first quantifying the improvement, how much of it is, do you expect to see before you don't want to string along a patient, into that second, third, or fourth visit, because I think for the most part, I think it's fair to say that we want to do what's right and best by the patient. And because it's just not a good business model to string these people along, they're going to pick up really fast that you're trying to screw them over. So that's, and we are legitimate, or I should say, I am legitimately concerned that I might unintentionally do that. And
I would say always starting each visit after your initial evaluation, you're going to give them some homework and setting up little touch points between the first and second visit, and then the second and third visit, like 2-3 days out, you just set up an email to go through, like G Suite has like a send later feature, right?
Okay.
You just do an email immediately after you finish with them. You say, hey, just checking in, wanted to make sure you're doing okay. Let me know if anything's going haywire and reach out to me. We can set up a visit earlier, but remember, here's your time. So it acts like a little reminder, and it also acts like you're touching base with them. Also reminds them that, hey, if you haven't done that homework that I told you to do, you got to do it because it's all on you. I can't touch you.
Right.
So you're almost using your lack of hands-on as a responsibility of the patient now, because you're like, look, if we're doing it this way, you have to do it. You have to make sure that you're doing the stuff that I need to see so that I know what's the result of you applying exercise to, the issue that you're having. Let's say it's repeated press ups, right? The McKinsey standby, the press ups, because that's all anybody thinks of with McKinsey. So you have them do press ups for 5 days and you wanted to see what the result was. Well, at about day 2, you can send them a follow-up saying, just wanted to check and see how those press ups are going. Remember we talked about 10 times a day, 10 times each round, 5 times a day. Just want to see if you're having any issues with that. And if not, really looking forward to seeing how this ends up on, next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. And then that's that nice little middle touch point. Now, if the patient comes back and they're like, I did the exercises and it hasn't improved at all in the slightest, 0. And you're like, okay, if you could tell me all the things that you couldn't do before, have you tried them now? So like, is there a functional improvement? Because sometimes patients will just see pain as like their absolute baseline. They don't even think about function. It's like, remember, you couldn't go upstairs, you couldn't tie your shoe, you got out of bed in the morning, and it was awful. And the patient's like, yeah, my mornings are actually, now that you mention it, a lot better. And so you're looking at those functional things.
They don't even remember sometimes what
exactly
if they improve. So
I usually ask them to give me a percentage improvement, if at all. I ask them, first thing I'll ask is, are you better, worse, or the same? And then after they say better, I'm like, all right, I don't believe you, but give me a percentage improved, because I want them to prove to me that they're better. So that's the number one thing, because I'm not coming from the bias of course you're better. No, I want to know for sure that you're better. So I'll ask them a percentage better. I'll ask them all their functional improvements that they're seeing. And then if they're like, no, I'm the same, or they say they're worse, number one thing I want to see is, show me your exercise. I will not give them any specifics about, basically, like, I won't even suggest, like, remember, this is how you do your exercise. Nope. I'm like, show me what your exercise is. I just sit there with my mouth closed, because if they're supposed to do a press up and then they do like some
double
funky
knee
neck
chest
exercise, you're like, hold on. And we've all seen that, right? We've all seen a patient come back And you're like, how many times do you do it? And they're like 5 times a day, 10 times, just like you said. And you say, show me their exercise. And it's a back exercise. And they're like, yeah, I just kind of, move around like this.
Right.
No, not really at all. So
Yes.
that's the important piece, to make sure that it is going along the right track. And then if patients don't, in my mind, if they don't jump maybe 10, 15, 20% each visit going towards that 100%, unless it's like long sustained chronic issue that I know is going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get better. If there's a quick fix, and in my estimation, I know that they should be better in 4 to 5 visits, and it's like visit 4 and they're like, I was 50% better, but now I feel 30% better. I'm like, something's goofy here. So I'll usually stop them at that point and say, look, let's really dig in, make sure this is the right thing. If it's not, let's coordinate today. Let's get you coordinated, because I do not want to waste your time. And you'll be surprised at how many patients are like, no. I love this. Don't go away from me. Please don't go away from me. And you're like, my job is to get you better.
Right.
Now, I want to make sure is that you not doing your exercise. And of course, I don't say that, but in my mind, I'm like checking off some boxes. Is it because they're not doing their homework? Is it because they are actually better and then decided, I'm going to go clean the whole house?
Right.
That's the number one thing that most people will do after the second or third visit. They feel 100%. And then they clean their whole entire house. And the day after, they're completely trashed.
On fire.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that's another thing that I will try and tease out, because as soon as they say I'm worse, I'm like, okay, how? And how were you 12 hours before?
Right.
So it's really, you have to dig in. And I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but there's so many things that are coming in my head that I'm like, make sure you check this box, make sure you check this box. Because if a patient just shows up and they're like, I'm worse, and it's the second visit, so many PTs are going to go, okay, let's get you to another clinic. And it's like, hold the phone there, hold the phone. You don't need to kick them out yet.
Right.
Dig in a bit with the promise that if it's not a good fit, you get them out today and give them their money back. So there's no pressure on anybody. Just make sure you're not kicking out a patient that would actually benefit from your services.
Right.
Because you don't want to dig in a little further.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's really good advice. Basically, I think for now, answering Brett's question in terms of the next step forward for a lot of therapists is, how do you transition from the outpatient, the typical outpatient, to this, right? I think, Rob, your platform's a great way to start. And if you can kind of give one piece of advice in terms of how to set up, what am I trying to ask here? Basically, what's the first thing you should do in terms of setting up a website, setting up learning Zoom, basically the real practical thing? Like, what's the actual step that you would say that needs to be done before anything?
Yeah. I would definitely say the number one thing, the easiest thing in the world, is to reach out to friends and family, get your free Zoom account, make sure that your free Zoom account has the green lock on it, like we're looking at right now. So it's the little security button. It's literally one click. And I think I've got 3 or 4 videos that walk through how to do that. But free Zoom, friends and family, start practicing.
Gotcha.
Like, not for money, but do it so you get those reps and sets in, and you get comfortable with the technology. And also you get comfortable with how to interact and how to do this online, because friends and family aren't going to judge you. They're going to be super thankful. We've all had family in PT school where our family and friends are like, hey, you're in PT school, right? I've got this nagging issue shooting out my toe.
Never.
I'm
No.
bleeding and I broke my tibia. What do you think I should do?
You felt fine before I got into the program. What happened to you now?
yeah, exactly. So it's just practice, man. Lots of practice. To actually get over the biggest hurdle that I see, which is people just not being comfortable with interacting with patients this way.
Right.
So yeah, friends and family, free Zoom account, takes no money. All it takes is time. And everybody has time. Even if you think you don't have time, you've got an hour or two.
Right. Okay. Digging a little deeper into kind of your methodology and your line of questioning, and basically your rationale for certain treatments during the telehealth visits. So full disclaimer, I completely agree with just the way that the tendinosis model is kind of being explained. I saw those videos. It's really intuitive, and just even the visual is really great, I think. And I'm sure we can kind of post a link there for people to. But I'm going to just play devil's advocate for 1 second.
Love
okay?
This. Yes.
Yeah, because just from I'm just thinking of some of my super cynical, skeptical friends right now that
Oh,
are
yeah.
like, yeah, you know, that are just like, what the hell are you think you're doing?
Yeah,
I just want
yeah.
my massage, you know, you know?
Right.
So have you ever had a case, and what did you do about this particular case if you did? If you had something that you thought was a very simple tendinosis,
Mhm.
Straightforward treatment, you do this exercise 6 times a day, 10 reps, and everything really, it's hitting all the marks, right? It's kind of like that pain off, pain on, pain off, and it's remodeling for the first week or so, but just things are not, let's just say you plateaued, like you kind of
Yeah.
mentioned, 1 or 2 weeks later. What's your next step then at
So
that
number one thing is I want to make sure that they can repeat back to me if it's 2 weeks in
point?
and they're like, yeah, I'm feeling better. Is it just because they started moving a little bit more?
Right.
Like some people have been so tiptoey, like,
Uh-huh.
oh, it's my calf. And, I never want to make it hurt like it did again. And so they're seriously walking weird
Yeah.
outside of me seeing them where they're trying to walk as normal as possible. But then as soon as the camera goes off, they're walking all wonky and
Hmm.
outside of their foot. So sometimes I'll bring a family member in
Hmm.
and actually try and see what the family member sees as
Hmm.
potential issues because I can't be there 23 of the 24 hours of the day.
Hmm.
So that's one thing that I'll make sure of to see if they're overdoing it. That's
Right.
also another big thing.
Hmm.
People will start to feel better after that second week and they're like, I'm good to go. And
Right.
then they start doing all kinds of stuff that they never used to
Hmm.
like before they actually had a tendinosis kind of come into play.
Hmm.
They're trying to do all that other stuff when they're only maybe 25% better, right?
Gotcha.
So that's one thing to definitely keep in mind. The other thing that I want to look at is make sure that the progressions are enough.
Hmm.
And I will have them do a progression with more load in
Hmm.
front of me for maybe 2 or 3 rounds within the hour span. And I'm
Hmm.
gonna say, look, I want to see how durable that tissue is.
Hmm.
Because if it can withstand all of the stuff we're going to throw at it today,
Hmm.
awesome. We need to figure out what that next layer is because your tissue is so durable.
Hmm.
In order for it to remodel, we need to add even more force to it.
Right.
We're going to use today as a full test day.
Right.
And so we'll do like I want to see their other exercise. Of course, like I said, play dumb, ask them what their exercise is,
Right.
have
Right.
them show it to you. They're doing it perfectly. Great. Okay.
Right.
Now we're going to see if we can go one level up and then we're going to add that and we're going to take a 10-minute break, make sure that it kind of basically ticks off the tissue a tiny bit,
Uh-huh.
but then starts to ramp back down within 10, 20 minutes. If it's gone and it's a 0, all right,
Uh-huh.
good. Let's try it again. And then,
So practically speaking, in terms of adding load, which
yeah,
requires some props sometimes, some
yep,
equipment, and some of the other videos I've noticed that you actually send the patient equipment like
yeah, yeah,
like bands and
yep,
things like that.
yep,
So you're doing like like a prime
yeah, man,
2 day.
yep. And it's so
That's
cheap.
awesome.
Like this
Yeah,
stuff is
yeah,
like it's and you can even
yeah,
look at like if you want something even cheaper,
yeah.
you have to ship it yourself. But seriously, if you go to like TJ Maxx or Ross or any of those stores, they have
Uh-huh.
that one little rack of like
Uh-huh.
dumbbells, and
Yeah,
they
yeah.
always have the 3 layers of TheraBand, and
Right,
it's like
right,
$4.99.
right.
Like it's the cheapest thing ever. So you can even tell them, I can ship this to you, or if you want it even cheaper,
Uh-huh.
have your spouse or your loved one or you, if you're able to get out there, go to one of these places and grab the exercise band, the
Hmm.
little box for five
Yeah,
bucks, and then bring it to the next visit. And we're going to crank out a whole new routine
right,
with those exercise bands that cost you $5.
right.
So it's one of those two different ways. Cause some people are like, I don't want to give you my address. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. Just here's where you're going to get it super cheap.
Right.
And so sometimes they have to hunt around a little bit, but pretty much everywhere has a Ross or TJ Maxx or something like that around there. And
Okay.
I love doing that because if I can ship it to them,
Yeah.
they are going to be compliant as anything. Like
Right,
they're like,
right.
oh, you just gave me this thing. I'm going to use it every
Yeah.
day. And I'm like, hold on, calm down. We're just going to basically, it's like when you touch a patient with your hands in the clinic, right?
Right.
You do something to them with your hands and they're like, oh, I'm so much better, right?
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing. When you ship them some piece of equipment, they think it's magic equipment,
Right, right.
even if it's
Yeah.
just some exercise bands.
Now, trust me, I would rather ship them something than do a kind of mindless massage for
Right. Yeah.
10,
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Exactly.
Christ,
Exactly.
which took up really the first year of my
Yeah.
outpatient clinic. It was just Dude, my horror story is, I'm sure everyone's had it. It's just,
I guarantee I've had it too, man.
dude, the upper trap, just
Yeah.
kind of standing there behind the chair, just massaging the hell out of, getting these knots out. And I'm just like, geez. And the crazy thing is, I'm thinking of this one lady right now, somebody different than that I mentioned before, really young lady. And as soon as I came back from the Part B, the Mackenzie Part B for the cervical thoracic, I tried the retraction progression, and it was a freaking one of the home runs that I was talking about.
Yeah.
But the problem was
afterwards, man, she's hooked.
Yeah. So yeah. So I was massaging this girl because she that's basically what she thought PT was. You know, she was expecting it. And I'm like, you know what? Let's change gears a little bit. I come back from the course and I'm like, I want to try this. And so I tried the retraction progression. It's absolutely out of the park. And then she goes, hey, what about my massage? And I'm like, Jesus freaking Christ. You know, I just, you know, like, what the hell? You know, what do you want me to do? You know, you're moving like 90% better.
Yep.
And you just seriously just want me to just kind of rub your neck a little bit.
I know. And
so it's just,
it's one of those where like, here is this home unit that's a TENS machine. Now it's going to do really similar things to like my hands with the massage, but it's going to take away your symptoms. And here it is. Like I've done that before too. And basically send a patient, a lot of post-surgical patients. If it's something where, you know, there's no metal or anything that's actually going to be in the way or dangerous or anything like that, I'll send them a TENS unit. Cause again, those are 20, 25 bucks. They're super cheap now.
Right.
Send them a TENS unit, have them have it. And I'd set it up with them just for some temporary pain relief while they're doing their activities. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, in a sense, sometimes the improvement is actually a little bit of a conflict in itself in terms of how fast it's coming along, because when you're in the clinic and patients are expecting a certain amount of time to spend 60 hours of God knows how long on the UBE or the BioStep machine, and all of a sudden now I've changed a session into, I'm thinking of a session that was, I actually timed it because I knew it was going to be short. I got her out in like 16 minutes, and I'm like, and then she's like, what the hell? Am I really done? Because I was here for like an hour before.
Right.
I'm like, what else do you need to be here for? You know? But that's an issue that I'm finding more and more to have to communicate to patients, like, hey, you know what? Especially when you're changing gears, when you've done an evaluation hands-on prior to, you know, the training that I'm taking right now. And it's like, it's just a real struggle. But I think overall patients, they like the results more than anything else.
Yeah. And just educating them. I mean, that's the other part that a lot of people will say, okay, I'm using telehealth and I'm kind of like, I hit the point of 29 minutes and then I'm like, we had a whole hour-long thing booked out. They've already paid for it. And it's like, number one, educate them for 15 minutes. It'll be the best education session they've ever had in their life. Like, over-educate these people. Because they're not going to be familiar with why I fixed so quickly in this one visit in this way. So it's almost an educational point and it's a marketing point, because you're arming that patient that just got that wow moment through telehealth now with the information to tell other people about, to where those other people will just step right into the same scenario of, hey, I heard you saw my friend Mary and got her better in like 2 visits. And she tried to explain to me why it was that way, but she just said, go see Kang. So that's why I'm here now. So you can use those leftover minutes to, number one, educate the patient, over-educate the patient. And number two, test them, like make them comfortable with doing things that they have not done in a long time. So, you know, somebody with back pain, I haven't tied my shoes in a ton. You do some press ups and they're actually feeling pretty good. All right, let's work on some stuff that actually kind of retrains your body to not freak out by bending forward. You know, that whole, if you ever watch Peter Sullivan do visits and sessions and stuff, the dude's a genius with that, because he'll just talk them. It's almost like a magic trick, right? Because you're just convincing the patient, it's okay. You're good. We just helped. And you, by yourself, patient, you did this. I just educated you. Now you have all the knowledge. Now let's start practicing some of that normal stuff that you need to get back to doing. And then that can take up the rest of the time.
So in like a follow-up visit, for example, or even like a 3rd or 4th visit, so after the educational piece, which I'm kind of assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, is a little bit shorter and shorter with each session. I'd imagine during the initial evaluation, much of, and the follow-up, a lot of it
Yeah.
is, what's going on and how it's progressing.
Yeah.
So are you watching them do the exercise during the second, third, fourth visit?
Yeah, I'll make sure, especially if we're progressing things, that they show me exactly what they're doing at home. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I just shut my mouth and go, show me what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll do it. And then we'll see if we need to tweak it. If
Right.
not, then I start drilling down on, okay, what's your improvement level? Because they're like, I'm better. I'm like, prove it to me. Because I
Mm-hmm.
want every single patient to prove to me, not just because I'm a nice guy, because
Right.
I hate that when patients are like, oh yeah, I'm totally better. And I'm like, how? And they're like, I just wanted to say that because you're a nice guy. And I'm like, no. If you brought me your car
Yeah.
and I'm a mechanic
Yeah.
and I give you your car back and it doesn't start, I did a horrible job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
But you're
this
still a
is
nice guy
something
though.
where, yeah, I need to be able to actually solve your points and
Right.
pain problems that you're having. So whenever I get to that point where it's second or third visit, and maybe they're doing the same exercise, I'm going to start digging into, hey, what do you want to get back to doing?
Right.
What can we start progressing and plotting out that you want to get back to? All right, I want to get back to gardening. Cool. How much gardening can you do now? Haven't done it in 5 years.
Right.
Okay. Can you get up and down off the ground without your back hurting?
Mhm.
Grab a pillow, just get down on the ground there on your knees like you're gardening, and then
Mhm.
see if you can come back up. How are your symptoms?
Right.
And I'll do real world tests trying to just achieve exactly what they want to get back to.
How about higher level sports, people who want to return to higher level sports? Do you find that, and just, this might be completely ignorant of me, but do you find that somebody who wants to get back to, like, I don't know, let's just say college level type sport is not, it's hard to test and retest that through a telehealth visit, or no?
Sometimes, so for example, if you saw any of the videos with that developer that I saw, and I posted that inside the group where he had knee pain, but it was coming from his back. And like the second visit I saw him, and
Is that
all he wanted to do,
was that Will?
no, not Will. It was
Oh,
another
okay.
guy. He used to work for a company, everybody knows the name of it. But it was his knee that he came in for, and then it ended up being his back. And the second visit, I was like, how are you doing? He was like, I'm okay. I was like, what are you hurting? Anything like that? He's like, yeah, I'm sore pretty much everywhere. I was like, well, what happened there? He goes, well, I played flag football. I was like, how long has it been since you played flag football? He was like 5 years. I was like, okay. So it's one of those to where when a high level athlete kind of sees the door open up, you have to give them at least some guardrails of, you can go out. Here's what you can do. Here's what I don't want you to push yourself past, because we're still in the phase of, we're not quite sure if you're all the way better yet.
Right.
So let's say with an athlete that comes in, evaluation time, they're 50% better. The next time I see them, they're 75% better. I want to give them some scenarios of how to push themselves to a limit. And then I want to see what they come back for that third visit, having pushed themselves to that limit.
Right.
Because the worst thing that can happen is they come all the way back and they're back at square one. Okay.
Right.
We know that was too much, but it doesn't mean that, oh, you'll never be fixed again. Mechanically, something made you better. Now we got to figure out how to get you 100%.
Right.
Or maybe it's 95% and they need to see you pay in-person visit for 1 or 2 to kind of get some sort of specific hands-on techniques. But I got to get them to that plateau of, I think you might benefit from 1 or 2 more final visits at this person's clinic or something like that,
Gotcha. So like somebody who's like a golfer, because there's a lot of golfers and hips with hip and back pain. Are you telling them? Are you taking as one of their, other than the movement baseline that you're taking during a test, than the actual visit? Are you telling them to report back to swing, like after a week or 2 of treatment, to take a couple swings and see how you feel, and then to kind of report back? Yeah,
I'll use that if that's one of their goals, and they're not like slouched over in a chair and they can get up and down pretty well. Let's say that they just have that nagging issue if they walk too long, or they're on the golf course and they start to play and they haven't done more than hit a few balls at the range every other week or something. I'll want to kind of use golf as a baseline. So I'll have them take a couple of swings if they've got like the ceiling height and everything's safe enough. I'll have them take a few swings just to give me an idea of how it looks, and number 2, what symptoms they're having when they do it. So that way we can use that as a baseline. And if I'm recording their sessions and providing them to them after, it's really good, because you can see their golf swing. And then the next week you can see their golf swing again. You can take little snippets and stitch it together to where you can show them, here's your golf swing and you reported a 6 out of 10 pain. Here's your golf swing 2 weeks later. 2 out of 10. Here's your golf swing. No pain, but it looks a little wonky.
Right.
And then I'll just have them go to the driving range and kind of give them some precautions.
Right. No, I mean, I'm right now. I'm just this scenario is kind of making me think of this this pitcher and golfer after watching the tendinosis videos.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing because I sent this man home after watching one of your videos with the guy comes in, puts the typical hop pack on.
Yeah.
And I have him do this one kind of movement that reproduces pain. And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're done. You do this 5 times a day. And he goes,
yeah,
what? And he bought in completely. Like after he's like, dude, it's not as bad after like 2 weeks, you know? And I just seriously, I'm looking at my flow sheet of exercises.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, the sideline ER, the freaking A's and the W's, whatever.
Right.
And I just literally put a freaking giant, cross, just really, and I'm building like 1 or 2 units of therapeutic activity now.
Right.
My boss is probably like, flipping through the roof, but
I know.
But it's gonna happen, man. And because honestly, it's so effective.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that the other stuff is useless, but I don't know, man.
No. Because honestly, it's just building the durability of the tissue. So think about it this way. If one of your managers is like, hey, you're not billing enough, you go, look, I got to get a handle on, is this a tissue tendinosis that is going in the right direction? If it's not, I got to change course. If it is, I got to let it heal to the point where then I can test the durability of this. And then I can do 30 minutes of exercise or like, a ball toss with a rebounder. And you're doing that for 5 minutes straight just to get that durability and that endurance of the tissue.
Yeah.
So it's not even that it's necessarily a way to cut billing or anything like that. It's just figuring out, is this on the right path to recovery? Okay, now we're 90% good. Now we can start cranking on durability of that tissue. Yeah. Because if tissue hasn't been used in a while, it's got crap for ATP in there. I mean, it's like 2 reps and done. So we've got to then reinforce that with lots of durability testing and on top of the remodeling.
Right.
So it's just kind of this little stair-step approach. And sometimes you just got to cut out the extra exercise because you got to have a handle on, is this a tendinosis that can be fixed or solved by the patient doing the exercise?
Right.
Or is it something that I've really got to hammer into? And it's actually a joint issue that's underneath an actual tendinosis, which those can be there all the time too, but it's just teasing out that puzzle.
Right. So that's where I think things get a little bit more challenging with some of the videos that have had both issues, one underlying the other. Yeah. The other thing that I'm running into in the clinic right now is, it doesn't happen too often, I would say, but when you have covering therapists that are just coming from a Maitland approach or ART, which I have both actually.
Yeah, and I'm ART certified in the spine too.
Yeah, so I heard, man. Yeah, that's awesome. But it's just tough how to explain, number one, the explanation of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, but having them kind of avoid certain things that I've actually started to adopt, such as avoiding the sustained stretching, just to promoting the dynamic movement, and overall just simplifying the exercise program until I can kind of progress them later and add all these other extras.
You got it.
But that's the toughest part right now that I'm working with this, because we're not all on the same page. Now there are some on Long Island. There are some clinics. I work for basically my quick work background. I work for a mega corporation that is pretty much buying up all the hospitals and all the outpatient clinics on Long Island.
Yep.
There are a few clinics that are kind of trying to promote MDT clinics, and so that everyone's trying to go for the MDT certification. Yeah. But man, mine's not one of them. It's just, it's really tough when I have 2 exercises on my flow sheet and this therapist is basically looking at me like I have 3 heads, so why aren't you doing the ball squeezes? And I said, you don't need the damn ball squeezes.
Right. Yeah.
Please stop with the ball squeezes. All right. And please stop with the clamshells, for the love of God.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing I'm running into. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was, another problem I would say is, we all know those what's the nice word? Motor morons.
Yeah.
Are people still using that word? Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Word is, yes.
Yeah.
The people that are unable to do complex motor movements in a very efficient manner.
Yes.
Repeatedly.
Let's be politically correct about this. Yeah.
You got it.
Are you ever I don't want to say denying, but are you ever like saying, hey, you know what? I just don't think, what's a nice way to put this? You don't have the coordination to do what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah.
And you're
Oh, yeah.
saying that you might need manual guidance.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
And that's if I see somebody that really has, number one, I want to make sure that they're comfortable with it. And it's not something where they're 2.5 hours out from the nearest PT clinic. And I'm like, all
Right.
right, we're just going to make it work, because there's
Right.
no way you don't have anybody to drive you.
Right.
You're there, but you literally, like, I've had patients that just have horrible glaucoma and they can't drive.
Mm.
And they don't have anybody with them during the day because they're kind of living by themselves, and they got a family member that checks in on them, but
Right.
they can't drive to a clinic. They don't want to take a bus. It's too long to actually get there by bus anyway. Everybody knows the bus transportations for most big cities, it's a nightmare. Like, they're either there an hour early or get there late or all that stuff. So in those instances, I'm trying to figure out what can we do that, number one, is going to be safe, and number two, is going to be effective. And so I'll set them up for that and say, look, usually you're in a scenario where you would need like a gait belt on you at all times. I would be afraid to do these exercises with you in a clinic without holding on to you. So I certainly don't want to do them now in a video example to where you just drop off the screen and I hear you go, help. I don't want that. Like, that's the last thing I want. So the number one thing, it's completely good to have come to Jesus moments with those types of patients, because they'll respect you immediately.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with going, damn, I don't know. I
Yeah.
really want to be safe with you. I know you're in a situation, or you have to dig in and say, tell me about your situation. Why can't you get to the clinic? Sometimes that'll help,
Right.
because then you have a good understanding of where they're coming from. And then you can say, okay, we'll try one full visit of finding the safest ways for you to do this, to where I feel comfortable with it and you feel comfortable with it. And then we're going to be able to diagnose this and figure out how to treat it, get it a full plan of care going. And if 2 visits in, 3 visits in, we don't feel like this is progressing, then we got to figure out, maybe there's some home health that can come out to see you and I can coordinate with them. Or maybe you can get to another clinic that you just didn't know because you're not good at using Google yet,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So actually that was my original thought, and I think I mentioned this to you last year, was if I feel like you need manual guidance or queuing or
yeah,
just
drive to them, man.
safety.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
more
I
than
was gonna
practice, man.
do the hybrid.
Yep.
The hybrid thing was on my mind, and the more I kind of dug into this, I was like, you know what? This is so much more. I don't want to say practical, but I think I can just reach more people,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
do it more effectively that way.
Yeah, definitely.
So I do have, this is a Q&A, and I do have 2 questions from the audience here.
Oh, awesome.
From
Okay, cool.
Ammon Burke. His first question was, I'm just beginning to familiarize myself with telehealth for PT. What are some sites or resources I can utilize to educate the small rural home health, I think, HH company I work with, and potentially get them started, is his first question.
Yeah, I would definitely say head to telehealthpt.com and get all the free stuff. Like, all the free stuff is going to answer the majority of questions that most people have. Inside the group, like, every time we've got almost 50 people join the group, I always welcome all those 50 people, because that's all that Facebook will let you link. And then I throw in the few, it's like a 12-hour Q&A. So it's different Q&A topics and sessions that I've done before. And so it's like 12 plus hours of that, and it's free. So the majority of the time I'll tell people to go in there, and I can even I'll put it inside the chat, because it's a pretty easy one to go to.
Okay.
And that's very easy, because everybody's asking, the majority of people that want to know how to get started.
We all have the same questions.
Same questions, man. Yeah, same stuff.
And seriously, when I watch some of the videos, I actually have to skip the first like 6, 7, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you're answering this, and I don't know how you do it with a straight face, to be honest, because I would go crazy if I answered the same questions like 5 times. But
I try not to repeat myself. I'm trying to make something funny about it, or trying to give a different
no,
example.
you ran out of. I'm telling you, there's no other way. You've done it so many times that there's no other way to do it.
Right.
But yeah, no, his site is great. I'm in the middle of, really, right now, that's what I'm digging into right now. And I'm just kind of trying to absorb and watch as much as I can to get started. And I think just even the resources of how to build a site, how to watch videos and consultations, it's been super, super helpful. And I know this is definitely a question. I'm definitely getting ahead of myself for sure, but what would you say in terms of, this being like a scalable business model? Like, in terms of employees type of deal? Is that something that's, because I know for the most part, even in concierge and mobile practices, for the most part, I feel like we're very kind of independent. You know, we have our own caseload, and then we're happy with it, right? We see 20 to 30 patients a week. We got to, you know, you've reached that status where you're full-time pretty much. But now, is this an actual scalable model, or is that something that's kind of not really been done yet?
I think that's a good question to tie in with Amon's question as well.
Yeah.
Is that you're going to have, so right now in home health, that's massive because they're cutting back a lot on PT. Like PT services are just not going to be the bread and butter that most home health agencies used to be able to utilize to basically make all their profit, because they used to use PT and PTAs, make tons of their profit. Now that's been cut back a lot. So they're having to look at some sort of distribution model that makes it more efficient for their company, still gets the quality of service that the patients will need, and it creates an instance of not having, not non-billable hours, but just having useful time spent with patients and therapists. So kind of on that same side, to kind of tie in both there, I think that it's going to play a role in every single business model, regardless if you're doing mobile practice, concierge, digital practice only, home health, outpatient, whatever. It's going to play a role. Now, the thing that scales that the most is being able to use it as efficient as possible now, before, let's say, insurance starts reimbursing, because that's when the tsunami of everybody else is going to jump in and be like, oh, I want to be able to do this. But if you've cornered your market, then you can expand really easy to corner your market, fill your schedule. You're just the dude that people go to see digitally. And then you get so busy that now you have overflow. And then you hire somebody PRN, just like most of these hospitals, or even like you're doing for like home health visits, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. It's just having the scenario where you can educate somebody and teach them the way that you do it. Maybe you have practice visits that patients have said it's okay to share with your potential future employees. You show them, you have your onboarding. Everything is scalable because you will know exactly all the tips and tricks that you stumbled upon, that you cut out to make yourself more efficient to fill your caseload. And now you can get somebody else PRN status to take your overflow. And then you can start that way, scale that into, now that person is completely full. Now you need another person to collect some overflow. So it's almost, if you've ever read the book E-Myth Revisited, extremely important book to read, because it teaches you how to work, on your business and not necessarily in your business. Because working in your business means your head's down, you're 30 patients deep every single week, and you can't even look up and go, oh yeah, I might want to expand this into a different practice. And then you're back down drowning again.
Right. Yeah, that's what I feel like. Now, don't get me wrong. I feel like that's kind of like 2 or 3 steps ahead of where most of us are at. But that's something in the back of our minds that we're constantly thinking about, because I think being, I know you're definitely an entrepreneur, but a lot of us have that entrepreneur mindset. And it's just kind of in the back of your mind, just something that you can never really, I never really shook, really, because eventually that's something that I'd like to get to.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's totally doable. Was there another question, Brett? I'm kind of seeing that
there is. We are over time here. I will let you answer. It's probably a quick answer here. How have insurance, well, you were kind of answering this just now, but how have insurance responded to billing telehealth, or is it mostly cash-based?
Yeah, mostly cash-based. And then what you're going to see in the next probably 2 years, probably 2021, there's going to be something where there's an avenue to get reimbursement if you qualify for, there's a couple of different instances. Hopefully that will pass the House and Senate this round, to where that will start in 2021. 2020, we don't have any codes yet. But then there's some hoops and hurdles you can jump over if you're in a parity state. So parity. If you just search parity physical therapy or parity reimbursement for telehealth, search Google with that term, you'll get the ATA, which provides a map and some information, kind of giving you that first step into getting reimbursement. I kind of go into a long spiel about that, but it is possible to get reimbursed by private insurance, not by Medicare, not by Medicaid the majority of the time, but at least by private insurance. If you're in a parity state, you can get some reimbursement, but most are cash right now.
Right.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining us, answering questions. I want to be respectful of your time here. Rob, where can people find you if they do have any questions about telehealth or things within that community?
Yeah, I would say just head to, if you're on Facebook, go to the Telehealth Physical Therapy Providers group, and then answer the 3 questions, because I do not let anybody in unless they answer those 3 questions, because there's too many spammers, scammers, and recruiters that try and get into our group. So answer that and then jump in the group. Ask me as many questions as you want on there. And then if anybody has any specific questions, you can just email me, Rob at ptlive.me. That'll be the easiest one.
So that's Rob, R-O-B, at ptlive.me. And then Kang, if people have questions about, getting started up or really just anything from your experience, where can they find you?
You could just email me, kangseo86@gmail. I'm also part of the group, Rob's group. So you can kind of either direct message me that way. And honestly, I'm more than happy to pay any information that I have that I've gotten most likely from people like Rob. I'm more than happy to kind of pay it forward and spend some time, because we're all pretty tired of just basically burning out, and we don't want to see it anymore.
Right.
So I'm more than happy to do that. Yeah, you can direct message
Awesome.
anytime. All right.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody in the audience. I would recommend you joining that group. It's just a great community of people who have the same interests, learning about telehealth, and then spreading that to the world, helping provide more care to patients who need it in areas that may not have the ability to receive care, or just in general for people who would prefer to see someone over a telehealth visit, saving that commute of an hour or whatever they may have to deal with on that end of things. Again, thank you all for coming. We will have more webinars in the future. Go to covalentcareers.com, or you can go to our YouTube channel to subscribe for our YouTube channel if you'd like to see more videos on really a lot of different subjects in relation to physical therapy.
Sweet.
Thanks again, guys. Usually we can sit in the panel room, but I don't know which button to click, so I'm just going to end things here.
All right, guys.
All right,
Take it easy.
thanks.
All right, I'll talk to you.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
again,
Bye.
guys. Take care.
Take care.